no matter who the mayor of New York is, we hate him, and then by the time he goes, we're like, that's the mayor. We love him, you know? No. Like Bloomberg, we hated. He'd come out and like cover the city in beige carpeting and then be like, shoes off. And we'd be like, ah. And then by the time he left, we were like, that guy, it's Mayor Bloomberg. And now we hate him again. It's like, it's a cycle.
Congrats on everything, I gotta say.
Thank you, man. Thanks so much for having me, Jimmy.
I'm looking forward to the show. Now, I know your stand-up pretty well. When did you start doing stand-up?
I started doing stand-up when I was about 19 years old. And I started in New York, but then I went on the road right away, just because those actually pay. Because shows in New York is like 9 people, and 8 of them are comics.
Yeah.
And one of them's like a pile of clothes. So I went out on the road to do shows right away. Like I was doing, I remember in my early 20s, I was doing the show in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
No.
Murfreesboro. I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Okay,
I'm not mispronouncing it.
You're not,
That's
no.
how it's pronounced.
That's a place.
Murfreesboro. It was, I think it was named by a dying Confederate general as he barely sat up in bed eating mashed potatoes. And his grandson was like, Pappy, you gotta name the town. And he was like, Murfreesboro. They're like, put it on the sign.
It is an odd
There's
name.
about 9 R's in Murfreesboro.
But
I was doing this is one of the worst shows I ever had. I was doing stand-up comedy in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, at an outdoor campground next to a beer truck.
Oh, that
Yes.
sounds awful.
Well, later some would allege that I was blocking the beer truck. But I disagree with that. I was doing the show on purpose. I was doing the show on purpose.
Of course you were.
It sounds awful, but it wasn't a mistake.
It was a gig.
Yeah, it wasn't like I was
you.
driving across the South in an old jalopy and it broke down, and the people of Murfreesboro were like, we'll give you supper, but you got to make funnies for us tonight. Like, I meant to do it. I had it on my calendar. You know, I was like, oh boy, only 2 more weeks until the worst night of my entire life.
But they didn't appreciate you?
Well, no, I got to the shows, and I put show in many quotes. And
How many quotes?
just as many quotes as there are R's in Murfreesboro. Take all the R's and make them quotes. Yeah, I get out on the stage. Stage was really nice. It was a lot like this, except not at all. It was a couple of 2x4s lying in dirt. I start to perform stand-up comedy, okay? And one guy yelled from the back what is the best heckle I've ever heard in my life.
Really?
He yelled, "Excuse me, sir. I think I speak for everyone here when I say that we would enjoy silence more than the sound of your voice."
What?
Yes. Insanely mean, no? But also, how very eloquent. Like,
That is the most eloquent
it's
heckle
like
I've ever heard in my life.
beautiful turn of phrase to enjoy silence more than the sound of your voice. If that was like the last line of a Maya Angelou poem, you would just shut the book and look out the window. And...
Here you are, you're hosting Saturday Night Live this week for the second time.
Second time, which is great. I was nervous. Some people don't get to come back.
That's true.
They do controversial things, like they tear up a picture of the Pope, or they are Robert Blake, and they don't get to, they don't get to be on the show.
They are Robert
They
Blake.
are
That's
Robert
correct.
Blake, the person.
No, exactly. But, I mean, you should be kind of used to him. You were a writer on Saturday Night Live in 2009, I want to say.
Yeah, from like 2008 to 2012, I was a writer there. And, well, it's totally different, though, now, because I'm on camera, whereas before I was like a busboy, and now I'm the maitre d'.
Yeah. But, I mean, did you ever think that you would host?
No, I mean, I auditioned to be on the show, but I was hired as a writer because I was auditioning, and I remember they went, no. And, but then I would get on camera occasionally, but the idea of hosting is totally surreal.
Well, it's a great cast. So, I mean, you're going to be you're in good hands.
It's really been the most fun.
Do you remember the
week ever.
first time you ever in a sketch ever?
Yeah. I was in, it wasn't on Update or anything. I was just like a clipboard operator, you know, when they go like, take 5.
I've done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in Activia yogurt commercial sketch with Kristen Wiig and Jason Sudeikis.
Oh, and she was Jamie Lee Curtis.
She was Jamie Lee Curtis. And
I do remember
Activia
this.
yogurt allegedly gave you diarrhea at the time, I think was the premise. And I come in, I go like, take 1, and I snapped it.
Yeah.
And then I walked off camera. You know, they go like, this way, you know. And then Bobby Moynihan was there, and it was my first time on camera. So we start high-fiving, like a lot. Like way too much for 1 line.
Yeah, but you was just so psyched for you.
And then I look over, and Lauren is staring at us. like this, and I'm just high-fiving him, and I see him, and then I realize that I'm late and I've missed my cue. And I ran back on and was like, take 5. And like, it was a full lull. I thought no one caught it. I get to the after party, and our mutual friend Neil Brennan comes over to me, and he goes, hey, man, great job. You're 5 seconds late on that second cue.
Yeah, dude, people can see it. I mean,
Oh, it was, yeah.
well, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but we actually have a clip. Here's John Mulaney missing his cue in his first ever Saturday Night Live sketch. Check it.
I killed this Activia. Can I get another?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah,
Thank
I'll
you.
just take one for myself. I'll keep
Okay.
going here. All right, let's do this. Here we go.
Activia testimonial number 2.
Oh my God, you were, but Neil Brennan's almost exactly right.
Yeah, wait, I was remarkably calm.
Yeah, you
I was
were.
like, I don't know, take 2. I was high-fiving.
You
I'm
were just
sorry.
jumping up and down with Bobby Moynihan.
Yeah, yeah.
You're gonna crush it this weekend. We love you, buddy.
Thank you, buddy.
You're gonna
Thank
do
you for
great.
having me.
Please, John Mulaney, everybody. There's a thing saying that you might run for
For
mayor.
New York? No, New York, not South Bend.
No, for mayor of New York
Yeah,
City.
no, I'm going to start with New York. But listen, no. It's not. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Please.
Really ready for it. It's unbelievable.
Thank you. Please sit down. Please sit
Here
down.
he is, John Mulaney.
Please.
Mayor Mulaney.
Earlier this evening, I called Mayor de Blasio and I conceded because I got 0 votes. And no, I don't know why I got this in my head. I know why. I had like too much. I had like a month where I wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
So I was walking around New York. I was getting so angry about things. You know, so I said I'm gonna run. I came home. I said I'm gonna run for mayor to my wife. You know.
Yeah.
And she said, okay, but you have to think about stuff for all 5 boroughs. It can't just be things on our block. And I was like, all right. But then I just, look, no matter who the mayor of New York is, we hate him. And then by the time he goes, we're like, that's the mayor. We love him, you know?
No.
Like Bloomberg, we hated. He'd come out and like cover the city in beige carpeting and then be like, shoes off. And we'd be like, ah. And then by the time he left, we were like, that guy, it's Mayor Bloomberg. And now we hate him again. It's like, it's a cycle.
Yeah.
So de Blasio's low, right?
Yeah.
Remember, were you at the Paul Simon concert when de Blasio got
Yeah,
up?
we were there together.
Yeah. Remember we got there like, ladies and gentlemen, Mayor de Blasio. Boo!
It was louder than like an encore for like Graceland.
Yeah. It was like Vince McMahon level theater. Like,
Yeah, that was crazy.
Blasio walks out with his stupid sideburns and. Here's why. In this, look, I know I won't be good as mayor. Okay, I know that. But here's my thing. I'm gonna get rid of Uber and Lyft, and if you don't like it, you can get rid of me in 2 years. But you can't. There's a bus lane, and then there's a bike lane, and then there's 1 million new Ubers, and then there's 10 billion new Lyfts.
Yeah.
And it's just, you can't do it. And I have a whole commercial. I got a whole commercial laid out.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't shot it, but it's, you know, you can imagine. I'm imagining it. So here's the commercial, all right? It's not fun, but this is just a good idea. So it's an ambulance, shh, it's serious. So it's an ambulance, it's going up 6th Avenue at 3 p.m. It's an ambulance. The sirens are going. You know, you feel the tension, right?
What time of the day?
3 p.m.
Yeah.
Right? It goes, it's 3 p.m. It's not rush hour. It's not lunchtime. And the streets are jammed. And then I'll have an actor that looks like de Blasio ride by on a bicycle, right? And then it'll say, now imagine someone you love is in this ambulance. And then it goes, boom, and it says, Bill de Blasio said he'd fix everything in New York, which he didn't. He didn't say that, but.
Can't put words in his mouth.
No, you can do that.
You can't do
I'm
that.
not going to put quotes. I'll say,
Oh, okay.
I'll say he said something like, okay, Bill de Blasio was like, I'm going to fix everything in New York, right?
You're safe.
Yeah, I'm in
My
safe
lawyer says you're
territory.
safe. My
Is he
lawyer
right?
says you're
Yeah,
safe.
okay, good, yeah. And then it'll just say, John Mulaney is mayor.
Wow.
I
That's
think
pretty
if you
good.
say, yeah.
That's a memorable commercial. And it hits a nerve.
I think it's like mean-spirited. I don't like that I thought of it, but once I thought of it, I thought like that's a good idea. I like Mayor de Blasio. I have had run-ins with him that I found awkward. I was hosting that Museum of Natural History benefit that Mr. Lorne Michaels does.
Our
the
boss.
the producer of Saturday
buddy.
Night Live.
And the Tonight Show as well.
And the Tonight Show, yeah.
That's right. He's
That's
our
true.
producer. Yeah. He produces everything in this building.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's a good TV producer.
He really is fantastic.
He's got hits. So he has this benefit at the Natural History Museum. Have you ever hosted it where you kind of go, welcome everybody. Look at all the animals, because it's like the zoo but they're dead.
It's a museum. Yeah, it's a museum.
Museum of animal
natural
bodies.
Yeah.
And what they would look like next to fake trees and stuff. But it's a nice museum. It's a great place. So I worked all day. I worked for like 3 days on all these jokes, and most of them were De Blasio jokes.
Yeah.
Because it's a New York audience, and I opened bad right away. Because I was like, this is great. I saw there's an elephant here, so finally for one night, the elephant in the room for you guys is not Jeffrey Epstein. And yeah, right. Just like you. Hey, no, but just like you. They were upset right away.
Yeah.
And I said, but like Jeffrey Epstein, this elephant was murdered. I did a second part of the joke. I know, right? Yeah, exactly.
But it's also, but this is a good room. That room, I will say, is a little tough.
You mean the museum with the highest ceiling in the world and all the richest people in the world staring at you? It looks like an event the Joker would crash into. And
He should open with that. He should open with that one. He should open with that.
wait, I gotta get another chance. So then I just did these introductory remarks, two of which you just heard, which were terrible jokes. So I sit down at the table, and then someone runs up and says, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest here. Mayor Bill de Blasio has dropped by, the benefit. Now, this was called a black tie event. Now, that means that you wear a tuxedo if you're a man. Now, I'm not saying you're not a good. I'm not saying you're a better person if you're in a tuxedo. But Bill de Blasio walks up in a light blue suit with a bright red tie, like a clown, and and they go, Bill de Blasio, and this is a nice event, and people go, boo, and I hear one person go, hiss.
Wow, bringing back the hiss.
So then Mayor de Blasio gets up, and he was not invited. He had just left his presidential campaign because he heard it was a lock, and he didn't want the pressure to get to him. So he gets up, and he's like, hi, it's me, the mayor. He had to remind everyone when he was mayor because he'd run for president. He was like, I'm the mayor. This is a great museum because they allow anyone in here, anyone of any sexual orientation. And everyone was like, yeah, that's every museum. Like, there's the only barrier to entry is a suggested donation, which no one does. No one's keeping anyone out of a museum.
No.
So then he said, I, by the way, have in my pocket a page of jokes that are all about de Blasio. My next 7 minutes was just going to be de Blasio jokes. So then de Blasio says, and it's all, this event is run by the great Lorne Michaels, an important person in New York, even though he's not from New York. And I was like, oh, man. Like, okay, yeah, right?
Getting hisses right now. Yeah, getting hissed. Someone's hissing over there.
So I get back, so I turn to Lorne and I go, I have a page of de Blasio jokes. And Lorne goes, do them. That New York thing, like when he said that, I was like, oh. And I know Lorne's from Canada. I know it. Like, he talks about it. He'll go, I'm from Canada,
Sure, yeah.
But if he looked me in the eye and he went, I'm from New York, right? I'd be like, yeah, you're from New York.
Yeah. One of the most New York people of all time.
I know.
Welcome back.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you for being here. Congrats on this movie, by the way. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I've never seen an animated film like this ever in my lifetime. It blew me away.
It's an absolutely mind-blowing animated film. It combines different types of animation because it's bringing together all these different universes of different spider men, women, and pigs, in my case.
Now, yeah, you play, which I kind of remember a little bit, but
Do you remember the character?
Kind of a little bit, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know,
okay.
but there was a character, it was all different types of Spider-Man, but you play Spider-Ham. Spider-Ham is Peter Porker.
Yeah.
And was this like a short-lived comic book?
No, not short-lived. It was a spin-off of sorts. I think started in 1983, and there are die-hard Spider-Ham fans out there.
Honestly, this was such a cool thing. I'm going in, and I don't really know much about comic books for Spider-Man. I know of them.
Well, I knew nothing about the actual project when I first started recording.
About the project.
Oh, yeah. So I got a call, and I said, hello, you know, and they said...
Good for you. That was
Yeah.
good improvising already.
Absolutely. Nothing fancy, ordinary hello,
No,
right?
great one. Hello, yeah.
And they said, this is a company, big company. Do you want to be in a movie? And we can't tell you anything about it, and we can't send you a script. Because when it's these superhero things, they really keep them under wraps. So they said, we can't tell you anything about it, we can't send you a script. Which is how a lot of kidnappings begin. But I was available, so...
I'm up for an adventure.
I was
Let's
like,
go for
all
it.
right, yeah, sure. What time, where? And
Unmarked van? Sure,
yeah,
it sounds
okay. Cool. Blindfold? Fine. So I get to a building, and, you know, it's like Los Angeles, so it's not like a famous, it's just a slab of concrete.
Yeah.
And I go in, and Rodney Rothman was there, and he said, do you know what's about to happen? Which, if it was a kidnapping, is a super creepy way to begin, you know?
That's even the worst. Do you know
Yeah,
what's
that's
about to happen?
These
Like,
psychological games
Yeah.
of like, are you prepared
no.
for level 2? So they said, we're making this film. They explained it. They said that the cast was insane. They said
Oh my gosh.
Nicolas Cage, Haley Steinfeld, Mahershala
Mahershala
Ali.
Ali is unbelievable.
And Jake Johnson. I mean, it's like a great group of people. I said, who else is the actors in it? And they said, you. And I said, I'm scared because I've never been like, I've never not known what a movie is, and then I'm about to be in the movie.
Yeah, and then be in a scene with Nicolas Cage. too,
Yeah. And they said, well, you play a superhero who's a pig, who makes non-stop outdated jokes. And I said, I got it.
Yeah, I got this nailed.
Absolutely nailed. It's really fun, and like I know this sounds like I'm selling it, but I kind of am. But
Yeah, that's why you're here, I guess.
yeah, I guess that is why we're here in some ways.
Sorry, me too, yeah.
But it's for like adults will like it and children will like it, and I only note that because when I was a kid, there was no movies that were for kids. There'd be like one a year.
Yeah.
They do like The Little Mermaid once a year. The rest of the time, it was like parents would like be like, "You're going to the movies."
Yeah.
And be like, "What are we seeing?" They'd be like, "Working Girl."
Yeah.
You cover your eyes the whole time.
Your parents would take you to those like adult dramas?
Yeah. Yes. They
Really?
did. No, for real, they did. I remember my mom and her sisters took me when I was maybe 7 or something to see this movie Regarding Henry. Remember?
Sure, yeah.
Hear the murmurs?
No, yeah, there's a Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford, Annette Bening, and
Yes.
he's shot in the head and he has amnesia, and they're trying to rebuild their marriage. Very adult.
Sounds like a kid's movie so far. Kids
Yes.
love that stuff.
I had to pee within the first 5 minutes, and it's a very good Mike Nichols film. So my mom was like, I really don't want to leave, but I'll take you. So then I come back 10 minutes later, I got to pee again. And she said, I'm not taking you to the bathroom again, all right? I want to watch this movie. So I said, okay. I had to go. I just waited, and I just went in my jeans. And then I didn't mind. And then I had a little, jacket, a kid, right?
Sure.
And I tied it around my waist in front, and I walked out, and my mom said, what's that about? And I said, oh, well, you said we couldn't get up again, so I peed in my jeans.
You said that?
Yeah, and she was like, what? Why would you do that? And I was like, I don't know. You said you wanted to watch the movie, so.
Oh my God, what a good kid, man.
Yeah, well, and also, I like Mike Nichols too. When I'm 7, I want to stick around.
So you go into this thing blind, and they give you a script, or do you get to improvise a little bit, or?
Oh, so yes, it is wonderfully scripted, but they did a thing that is very generous when they say to comedy people, they say, have fun with it, and add your own words. And so for the very first session, I'm still in fight or flight because I think it's a kidnapping.
Yeah.
I did go my own way with it, and I threw in my own lines. And what happened was I was just cursing wildly.
Well, no. This is you. Thank you for you saved this exclusively for us. These are outtakes. These are not in the film.
Yes, they sent along the
John
audio.
Mulaney doing the voice of Spider-Ham.
This is real. I
Yeah.
did this. Damn right. Oh, you bastards. And how the is he gonna do that? And how the exactly is he gonna do that? 2 days. I've been Spider-Ham 30 years.
They can't use any of that. So, what point did you find out that they come over and go?
They were like, yeah, they had said go nuts, so I'm like, you mother, I'm screaming, and then I paused, I went, what is this movie rated? And they said, PG, and I said, oh, so nothing I've just said is usable. And they said, no, but we just wanted you to have fun.
Your new Netflix special, John Mulaney and the Sack Lunch Bunch.
Yes.
I'm very excited about this.
Yes.
This is a sort of variety show with kids involved.
Yes, this is a show for kids, by an adult, with kids present. It's a children's musical special, and I am a man with no children and no musical ability. But I wanted to do a variety special, and I wanted to do it with kids.
Yeah.
And it's a nod to the shows I grew up on.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do like the Sesame Street I grew up on and you probably grew up on, which was that like funky, like Art Garfunkel and Grover and a girl named Gina would be like leaning against a stoop, smoking a cigarette. And there'd be like music, but then someone would come over and be like, you hear about Mr. Hooper? And they'd be like, what? It'd be like, he died. And they'd be like, oh no, what's death? And it'd be like, it's when you die. And then they just cut to an industrial video of orange crayon being made, and we forget about that we just learned the existential dread of death, and we're watching a weird industrial of orange wax becoming crayons, and then you cut back and it's Smokey Robinson, and he's like, near, far, and then you cut back and you're just like, all right.
Man, what a weird show.
Yeah.
It is bizarre.
Yeah, I don't think there was a script to that.
No, not at all. You start the whole special with the quote. Do you mind
Oh, yeah.
reading the quote or saying the quotes everyone?
The special begins with a maxim that I find to be quite true, which is, do you know who tells the truth? Question mark. Drunks and children.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
And, yeah, who's that? They agree.
Wise word.
Who is that quote from?
That is from Erica Jane of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, season 9, episode 20. It's right after they go to the wine tasting thing where Kyle and Teddy get way too drunk. The next day, Erica says, you know who tells the truth? Drunks and children. I was working on the special at the time, and I was in one of those moods where I went, that's going in. And,
Absolutely.
and the kids are kind of, they're not like drunks. Well, they can't drive. They shouldn't drive. But they are very blunt and truthful the way some people are after they've had a few drinks.
Yeah.
They'd come up to me on set. One kid came up to me the first day and he said, because the special was directed by a great director, Rhys Thomas, who I've worked with many times. And he said, so you're not the director? And I said, no. And he said, oh. And I said, do you think I have less authority now? And the kid said, yeah, I do. And he walked away.
Honest.
Yeah,
But
just blunt.
But you talk about like some...
They got into their fears. Yeah, I wanted to know what they were worried about.
What scared you as a child? John Mulaney, little John Mulaney.
What scared me as a child was not just Robert De Niro from Cape Fear breaking into my house. But it was that I, being the only one that was prepared for Robert De Niro from Cape Fear to break into our house, that I would be the lone survivor. And so it was on me. It was my burden. Because none of my brother, my sisters, my stupid parents, they weren't prepared for Robert De Niro. And he kicked the crap out of Nick Nolte. And Dad, you are no Nick Nolte. So I had to sleep I slept with a crowbar under my bed.
What?
Yeah, I just found it recently. It was kind of sweet. And
It became like a toy of yours?
no, it became a crowbar because I was ready to roll at any time. And I had a bat, and it was like, if I hear Robert De Niro downstairs ha-ha-ha-ing it, you know.
Yeah. You were ready to attack.
Yeah.
I gotta say, the celebrity cameos are fantastic in this special as well.
Yes.
I love it. It's like Richard Kind.
Yes. Jake Gyllenhaal.
Jake Gyllenhaal is in this. David Byrne.
Yes, David Byrne. Andre DeShields, who just won the Tony from Hadestown, and Annalee Ashford. A lot of great Broadway and film people came together, which was super fun.
Is there any guests that you wanted to have on that you couldn't get?
Stevie Nicks. Ooh. I wanted Stevie Nicks.
She's tough.
A hush fell over the room unlike any I've ever heard before.
Yeah, because she's a magical being.
She is a magical being, but when she passes on a TV project, she really passes on it.
What do you mean?
Well, I was looking for her for like a month. You know, I can't catch her. She's, you know, she's a ghost in the wind, right?
Yeah.
So I finally called her manager, and I said, "This is John Mulaney," and she went, "Oh, you're that guy." And I went, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Listen, Stevie heard about the project, but she's on tour and she has a limited break, and so it's just not something she can do." I said, "I totally understand. Thank you so much for considering it." And then she continued. She said, "Also, Stevie listened to the song, and she doesn't think it's funny." And I said, "Oh, okay. Yeah, you know, the first answer was good enough." And she said, "Stevie's confused because this is not one of her songs." And I said, "Oh, no, I know. It's a parody song that she would be singing in, but if she doesn't like it and is not available." And she said, "Yeah, she doesn't like it." And I said, "Okay." And I started laughing really hard because this was the longest pass I'd ever heard in about a decade of entertainment. And she said, "You know, she did do TV once with Ryan Murphy." I said, "Yeah, she was on American Horror Story Coven. She did Seven Wonders, that song." And she said, "Yes, but Seven Wonders is one of Stevie's songs." And I said, "I know that. This was a parody song." And she said, "But she doesn't find it funny." And I said, "I get that. I get all of it." And then I said, I want to let you know," I said to her, "I've been passed on many times. This is the greatest pass in my career. And I please thank Stevie for me and just tell her I said hello. And basically tell her I wrote the part because I want to hang out with her." And her manager said, "Well, then come hang out. We have people in the backyard all the time."
So are you gonna hang out with Stevie Nicks?
I don't know. She didn't like my song.
Come on, man. Come on. She invited you over to the house.